You're listening to Coffee Break Flight Instruction by MzeroA.com. Flight train tips in 15 minutes or less.
Hey everyone, Jason Shafford here of MzeroA.com alongside a good friend, CFII extraordinaire, Mr. Larry Diamond, also known as Uncle Larry. This is Coffee Break Flight Instruction, flight train tips in 15 minutes or less. Well, let's go ahead and start that timer. Topic today, staying current, both for my VFR and my IFR guys. You know what, I understand we can't, we're not all aircraft owners, scheduling difficulties, work difficulties, life difficulties. We can't go out and fly every day we'd like to. So what can we do to stay current? I actually want to start talking to my IFR guys just real quick, because there are some very IFR specific things, and then the VFR stuff can apply to both sides of the spectrum. I kind of want to share. We know that for my IFR currency, I have to do my approaches, well, really to stay current every 6 months, right? Well, 6 months is a really, really long time. You know, I don't want to go out there and be shooting approaches down to minimums in a little Cessna 150 if I haven't flown an instrument approach in, say, 5 months. Would it be legal? Well, depends on the circumstances, but yeah. Would I want to do that? No, I don't think I want to do that. Your skills erode so quickly in that case. I'll never forget, I had a student, private pilot, very, very nice guy. Got him all the way up, passed his check ride, everything was great, and kind of lost touch with him. You know, he had a goal of becoming an aircraft owner. I assumed he was pursuing that, everything else. Well, sure enough, 2 years later, I get a call from him saying, "Hey, Jason, I need a flight review. I need to get current again." Cool, man, that's great. Awesome, let's meet out at the airport and everything else. So I meet him out at the airport. We're just kind of chit-chatting, talking, and everything else. And I open up his logbook, and guess what the last flight was? The last flight was his check ride. And he's showing up to do his flight review, and his last flight was 2 years ago. And I'm thinking, man, I hate to be a heartbreaker, but if you think that you're going to show up here for an hour worth of ground and an hour flight, I'm going to sign you off. Given your proven history, you're probably not going to go flying, but you could, and you're my responsibility. I'm not willing to sign that off just yet. It's going to take a little bit more than just an hour of ground and an hour flight. And he understood that. We continued to work on that and kind of gave him some of the same tips I'm going to give you guys for people who sometimes life just gets in the way. IFR guys, if you don't have a simulator or some means of simulating an instrument approach, listen, your airport may have a little PCAT, is what I call it, PCATD, that you can actually log some flight time on and go down to the local airport and practice some approaches. Maybe you're real lucky and they have like a Redbird flight simulator, something really nice that you can practice those approaches in. And those can work to help with your IFR currency, both from a legal standpoint and just from keeping you sharp as far as that sort of stuff goes. Really across all boards, though, VFR, IFR, on days like, listen, maybe it's just a poor weather day. You were supposed to go flying this Saturday, but the weather's really stinky. You know what? I am such a big fan of chair flying. You probably did chair flying back in your flight train days. You just kind of sit back and you just run through that entire flight. You run through your flight maneuvers. You practice these sort of things. Chair flying is huge. Something you're doing right now because you're listening to this is really just immersing yourself in aviation. You're listening to Coffee Break Flight Instruction right now. You're immersing yourself in aviation. You're kind of doing a modified chair flying with myself and Larry right now. So staying immersed in aviation. Chair flying. VFR and IFR guys can get benefits from the simulator. There's so much great software out there, software that can help you with your radio communications as well and staying current on this sort of stuff. You know, when I was flying up in Massachusetts, we frequently got snowed out from flights and everything else, and just to stay current sometimes, I would still plan the cross-country flight out as if we were really going, just to stay proficient with it. I would still calculate the weight and balance, because can you imagine if you were used to calculating a weight and balance by hand for a few months and you stop for a while and you think, how do I come up with this number? How do I do this and figure this out? If you've been reading Good Pilot magazine, Larry's been sharing a lot of his density altitude calculations. Well, to some of you it may look like a foreign language, but possibly at one point you knew that stuff. Just staying on top of these sort of things is going to be so important. One last thing, and I'll pass off to Larry for a second. METARs. I tell my online ground school members, my goal is I want them to read a METAR a day. I want you to read it. You can have it texted to you on your smartphone. You can jump on ForeFlight, FlyQ, whatever app you want to use. Read the METAR, and then go outside and experience it. When it says the winds are 060 at 13, walk outside and feel what 13 knots feels like. When it says the clouds are 3,000 foot overcast, look outside and see what clouds at 3,000 feet actually looks like. Even something that simple. Number one is keeping you proficient on how to read METARs. Leave them in the raw format. Please don't translate them. And then get out there and actually experience it to help you make smarter go and no-go decisions on that front. So that's really what I have for kind of staying current. Larry, you have anything you want to chime in with on there? Maybe some tips you could offer?
Yeah, I do the same thing. What I do is, you can see it. We can have wonderful weather behind my shoulder over here. Right now, it's snowing like 6 inches. So what I do is I pull one of my IFR flights. So let's say I'll shoot an approaches out to Coldwater, Michigan. So I'll actually sit down. Actually, I'll not pick up the phone, but I'll actually call flight service, get the weather at least for that day, file it, and then go sit on my couch, pull my approach plates on my new iPad mini, and actually fly it. I'll make all the calls. I mean, I look kind of silly, kind of like talking to Detroit Approach when I'm sitting here in Canton, Michigan, 5956 Pinewood Court, but I do the whole thing. I have my approach plates. I even say, okay, what happens if I go miss, where I'm going to do alternates? And even for, and I'll just pick like at least 2 different airports. So for realistic terms, for my IFR stuff, I do at least 3 approaches every month. And I just try and pick different ones. Or I'll try and pick different ways of doing it, or use different airplanes or different equipment, and just kind of keep going over and over again. And so that's what I do for the IFR. For the VFR, my students know that there's a lot of times we're not going to go flying, so I do exactly the same thing. I said, okay, let's plan a flight to Grand Rapids, Michigan, instead of going out to Adrian, Michigan. Tell me everything you're going to say. I want to hear all the radio calls, how you're going to set up the airplane, pull out your charts. We're going to point to different airspaces as we kind of go along and do the whole thing. And actually, it ends up taking like about 2 hours to kind of go through that. And then I even said, okay, so what's your emergency checklist? Because what's going to happen if you get a fire in the airplane? I said, it's a lot better to do it down in the ground than it is anything else. So currency is everything. I mean, if I saw that guy who hadn't flown in 2 years, I would have said, hey, look, we need to set up at least like 10 lessons here.
Yeah.
I said, there's no one in the whole wide world that would sign that book.
No. Too much of a liability, right?
Yes.
So good stuff, Larry. And guys, this is the thing. I know life and family gets in the way, weather gets in the way, you can't always fly, but you need to be taking small little baby steps to stay current. And you're already doing one of those. You're listening to Coffee Break Flight Instruction. Maybe the next baby step is going into iTunes and pressing subscribe so they just instantly get downloaded to your phone so you're never missing an episode, to help you stay current. Let Larry and I kind of maybe be your accountability partner to make sure you're staying on top of that and make sure you're realizing that your license is truly a license to learn and you're living out that good pilot is always learning mantra. It's more than just a catchy slogan. It is a philosophy to fly by. So, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode of Coffee Break Flight Instruction, flight train tips in 15 minutes or less. On behalf of myself, Uncle Larry, and the entire MzeroA.com team, hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And most importantly, remember that a good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, guys. See ya.